Hello everybody, my name is Karen. I'm a journalist from New York, but I've been living in Italy for quite some time. I studied at university here, and we're all here today for different reasons: to work, to study, or to be with family. We're here together today for the first of 5 episodes, a program which also works as a course. We're going to understand and above all explain how Italy works. But which Italy are we talking about? Of course, Italy is a monument to history, full of beautiful and ancient cities, but today we are interested in speaking about an Italy which has a great influx of migrant citizens from many different countries. We're here to speak about us, you, and the new citizens of this country. We are going to speak about the many people who every so often have chosen to come here looking for work out of necessity or have been obliged to. We will try to explain and describe the problems along with the legal rights and different possibilities. By that I mean the rules, laws, and regulations, as well as the opportunities. Naturally, your obligations, but also your possibilities. Adam will accompany me along this trip.
Hello, everybody.
Adam is a new Italian citizen, too. He comes from London. Even though he's not completely new, he has been living in Italy for quite a few years already. He's an expert at his job, working in an assistance center for migrant citizens. He's also an expert in problems regarding immigration, law, legal problems, legal rights, rules, and regulations. Adam works in one of those funded information centers for immigrants. He's the perfect person to act as our guide about being a new citizen. But first of all, let's go back to Italy. My experience of Italy began when I came here to study, and I met many people. I learned an important thing. Italy is internally very diverse with many differences, above all from a geographical point of view. It is a country that connects Europe and Africa and the East and the West as it sits at the very center of the Mediterranean. Let's take a look at the first map. Can you see what it represents? Of course, it's Italy. We can also see some other things. In the north, it seems a typical northern European country with mountains and so on, whereas in the south, it looks a little like other Mediterranean countries. But hang on a second, it's also made up of the people who live there, from the north to the south. These people are the fruit of centuries of different backgrounds and walks of life. They say that the first population arriving in Italy came from northeastern Europe and the steppes of Russia. These groups of people then mixed with other people, coming from the Middle East and Greece, then with the Etruscans who lived in the center of Italy and Tuscany long before the foundation of ancient Rome, and then with the Latins who gave rise to the Roman Empire. In short, Italy has a grand and ancient history of culture and encounters. Just think about Latin, which transformed into Italian, French, Spanish, and other languages. It's a culture that, despite the centuries of wars, famines, diseases, problems, and hardships, continues to make Italians live and grow together. And so perhaps we have to begin from here, from the idea of living together, of cohabiting. Cohabitation meaning living with, doesn't it, Adam? What do you think about this idea of cohabitating?
Well, this isn't just an idea, is it? It's also a concrete way to do things. While you're living, there are many other people around you who probably have different ideas and tastes than yours.
This isn't the only important thing, since this idea of living together can only work if it's accompanied by rules that serve to organize our rights and duties. Adam, can you help explain a little about Italy and the idea of living together and these rules?
Well, yes, I can. It's true, Karen, that there is a lot of information out there as well as a lot of rules to learn. But I really do believe that we have to understand these rules as strictly linked to the idea of being able to live together. In fact, we shall soon see that we'll begin with the rules of all rules. This is called our Constitution. And it's the main laws of the state which the principles and rules underlying all the other rules are derived from. Most nations that possess what we call a rule of law have a constitution where a recognized and stable set of laws apply to the state as well as to the citizens. During our program, which let me repeat is a true and bona fide course for immigrant citizens, and the other episodes, we will speak about many other laws and regulations. For example, the residence permit and how to get it, or work, education and schooling for our children, or our health and the services available for citizens, and I mean all citizens. We will also look at other institutions and how the Italian state is organized. We will talk about important institutions for citizens such as the regions or local councils, where you go to get your documents from, a residence certificate and so on. We will also speak about other documents such as a driving permit. All of this is in our next 4 episodes. What are we going to talk about now, Karen? What's next? The most important part, starting from the idea that they form the basis of the Constitution, not only Italian, is the idea of tolerance. What I mean is the acceptance and respect of others, a reciprocal respect. As I mentioned before, the Constitution is the collection of the fundamental laws of the Italian state. However, there's also another interesting point. The Constitution was written immediately after the Second World War. Italy was at that time governed by a dictatorship known as fascism and allied with Hitler's dictatorship of Germany. It came out of the war defeated. This defeat, together with the struggle by the resistance led by many Italians against fascism, brought about the downfall of the dictator. Out of the struggle and defeat of the dictator, the Italian Constitution was born. After the war, which lasted from 1939 until 1945, an assembly elected by citizens met from 1946 until 1948. They were responsible for drafting the Constitution. The Constitution Assembly, as was its name, consisted of 556 citizens with different ideas elected by the people.
Adam, does this mean that the Constitution isn't only important as a collection of laws, but also because they are fundamental laws?
Exactly. Moreover, it's also the story of liberation by the Italian people, their liberation from the dictatorship and the war. The Constitution contains the principles and values that form the basis of all the laws in the state of Italy. It came into effect on the 1st of January 1948, and it established the function and organization of the Italian Republic. It lists the rights, freedoms and duties of Italian citizens and of all those living in Italy. Therefore, we can say that it regulates the everyday life of Italian citizens. We can see that within this document, the Constitution is really a story. It begins with the general principles from the recognition of the fundamental rights of man, women and citizens, up until how the Republic organized itself as a state by creating itself.
Where shall we begin, Adam? Which are the fundamental points?
Well, the Bill of Rights tells us that Italy is a democratic republic, right in the first article of the Constitution, and the sovereignty belongs to the people. Which reminds us that after the unification of the country until the period of fascism and war, Italy was a monarchy governed by a king. Please let me underline the idea of overcoming the period beforehand. It makes a big difference. A king doesn't govern, he rules, he commands. A democratic republic governs through its institution, for example, through an assembly, as in parliament, or government bodies elected by the people. Therefore, in a democratic republic, the sovereign is the very same as the people of the country.
But apart from this news and overcoming the preceding period, there's something that interests us much more directly, isn't there?
Absolutely. Article 2 says that the inalienable rights of every single citizen within whichever situation or field wherein they live are recognized and guaranteed. These rights and freedoms cannot be reduced or eliminated. This means that these basic rights are recognized for every citizen in any circumstance.
Well then, let's move on immediately and see exactly what these rights are.
Well, we spoke earlier about the liberty of expressing your own thoughts and religious beliefs. Well, Article 3 tells us that all citizens have equal social status. And everyone is equal in the face of the law. Let's be more specific. This is without any distinction of sex, race, language, religion, political opinion, and personal or social circumstances.
Yes, let's underline this. Equal rights without distinctions of religion, sex, or opinion. I agree, Adam, that this point is absolutely fundamental. This is the basic right that can never be taken away. Remember this. Isn't there another important point to make here? What about social circumstances?
Exactly. It's worth remembering that discrimination is prohibited in Italy too. Not only is there a special office to combat discrimination called the UNAR, the Office for the Promotion of Equal Treatment and the Removal of Discrimination based on Race or Ethnic Origin. Some regions and some local councils have also set up some anti-discrimination window counters, whose job it is to help the victims of discrimination in all spheres of social life, from schools to the workplace.
Ah, good. If I come across a case of discrimination, now I know where to go.
That's not all. The Constitution goes on to say that the duty of the Republic is to eliminate obstacles of an economical and social nature that can actually limit and prevent the full development of man and his effective participation in political, economical, and social life.
Remember that the beginning of the first article of the Constitution says that the Republic is also based on work. What does that mean? This might seem a little difficult to explain and understand.
Indeed, since this is another important point, because it has to do with both rights and duty. And perhaps I'd also add that this matter also affects immigrants. On one hand, it is specifically about rights regarding the state. The Republic, by its own measures, has to carry the possibility for people to carry out their activity. On the other hand, this article begins to touch on the issue of duty. In fact, Article 4 states that every citizen has the duty to carry out, according to their own possibilities and choices, an activity that contributes to the material and spiritual progress of society.
What does this mean exactly?
This has to do with our work rights as well as the duty to do something for society. It underlines the idea that work or an activity builds and keeps alive the place where we live together. Of course, you also need to remember that this is according to their own possibilities and choices.
Here again comes out the idea that you mentioned before, that the Bill of Rights is a story as well. A story where we go from explaining the rights given to each of us, what we can do, to what we are obliged to do for society.
As well as how we should behave. Which brings us to the organization of the state.
That's right. Why don't we take a look at another chart? Another summary regarding all the points we have touched on so far about the Constitution. Let's try and read it back again together. That way we can try to remember it all. What do you think, Adam?
Okay, let's read it. Italy is a democratic republic founded on work. Sovereignty belongs to the people, Article 1, exercised in a manner and within the limits of the Constitution. Inviolable rights, civil rights, Article 2. Okay, here are your rights. Inviolable rights, personal liberty is inviolable, Article 10. Inviolable rights, home, Article 14, the home is inviolable. Freedom of communication, Article 15. Of movement, meeting, Article 17. Association, Article 18. Religion, Article 19. Everyone has the right to freely profess their religious beliefs. Let's remember this important point. The right of freedom of thought and expression, Article 21. As we shall later see, it is connected to the judiciary. Inviolable rights, Article 24. Everyone can take legal action to protect their legitimate rights and interests. Furthermore, criminal responsibility is personal. The defendant is not considered guilty until the final sentence. Punishment cannot consist of treatment contrary to human dignity and must aim at rehabilitating the offender. The death penalty is not permitted, Article 27. And lastly, one of the most important principles, we saw it earlier and how it connects to the other articles, the principle of equality, Article 3. All citizens have equal social standing and are equal before the law without distraction of sex, Article 29, C.2, 37, C.1, 48, C.1, 51, C.1. Race and language, CFR Article 6, religion, CFR Article 8.19. Political opinion, CFR Article 22. Personal and social condition.
In those following parts of the Constitution, we instead come across another important question. Like the Republic, the state builds and organizes itself. But what parts and elements is it made of?
Indeed, actually, Karen, before we speak about how the state and the Republic is made up, and following from what we talked about regarding rights and duty, I would like to point out that the Constitution talks about social relationships like those of economics, etc. Actually, even earlier than that, the first part of the Constitution speaks about social relationships. All right, let's start from the bottom up, so to say, from the most personal social relationships. Article 29 says that the Republic, the form that the state has in Italy, recognizes the family. The Republic recognizes the rights of the family as a natural society based on marriage. This means that both the husband and the wife have the same rights and the same duties. There is complete equality between the spouses in Italy, within the limits set by law to guarantee the family unit. We'll return to this point later in the series in the episode dedicated to schooling and children. For the time being, let us remember this more general point: moral and legal equality of the husband and wife, along with all the guarantees of the family unit. Now let's look at economic relations. The Republic protects work in all its applications and forms. It cares for the training and professional advancement of workers, Article 35, as well as the liberal right to form trade unions to defend workers' rights, along with the freedom of enterprises.
You can see even here how many important indications the Constitution gives us. Important things touching on specific points, not only abstract rights, therefore important to all our lives.
That's right, which brings us to another interesting point. This same article also states that the Republic recognizes the liberty to immigrate, subject to the obligations established in law in general, which also protects Italians working abroad. According to the Constitution, nobody may violate the freedom and the home of a person, except in the cases and manner provided by law through a judge's ruling. The Constitution was written in a period when Italians went abroad looking for work. Today, the opposite is happening.
Right. This is an extremely important point, especially after having looked at civil relations, inviolable rights, social relations, family and marriage, economic relations, work and enterprise, to workers' rights as well. We'll speak further about work in one of our next episodes about the rules that govern work. Let's get back to today's issues. We were speaking about political relations. What's that about, Adam?
Well, political relations. This regards the right to vote, and we'll see just how important that is in a bit. The right to freely associate in political parties, the right, and this is particularly important for women, to equal opportunities for both men and women in public office and elected positions and in public administration. Now we're getting on to our central point. The second part of the Constitution, the description and regulation of the operations of the state, from the order of the Republic, basically how the state is organized in the Italian Republic. There is a very important point I'd like to make. The life of this country is governed by the distribution of power between different institutions. It is the famous principle of separation or division of power, typical of any democratic state. The legislative power that lies with those who make laws, Parliament, the executive power, the government, and the power exercised by the judiciary. The various powers to which are attributed different functions, thanks to the main laws of the state, that of the Constitution, must be separated so as to balance out itself and prevent any abuse. In the second part of the Constitution, a primary body is identified. This body has the job of making the laws. It's called Parliament. Parliament is composed of two chambers, the Chamber of Deputies, made up of 630 deputies, and the Senate, made up of 315 senators. Both of them are elected by universal suffrage by the Italian citizens.
It's also important to remember that all Italian citizens of age can vote, both men and women. To vote for the Senate, you must be over 25 years of age. The vote, as the Constitution says, is personal, free, secret, and equal. These assemblies propose and vote for the laws that are approved by them. Here, Adam, we also find another important point. It regards the second part of the Constitution. This balance between the powers that should act as a guarantee against abuse actually extends a bit to all the organizations of the Republic and of the state.
Yes, indeed. For example, Parliament, with its two assemblies, doesn't only propose and vote for the laws, but also gives their own vote to support the government, or it may fail. The government is the executive body that administers the country and all sectors of public life, including the domestic politics, foreign policy, economics, health, education, public works, and so on. It takes the steps to act or put in practice the laws and proposes different types of laws.
The government obtains the trust towards these activities on the basis of their votes obtained by Parliament. There is a head of government or prime minister or premier who guides this executive power together with the ministers. That's
exactly right, Karen. The game of balance becomes much more complex and interesting. Speaking of this game, it's democracy that's at stake here, as well as the construction and maintenance of the Republic. Here we find the other fundamental figure in the Italian Constitution, a figure of control and above all of guarantee.
Here there is a president of the Republic or head of state, who, unlike other countries where he is the head of the government, here he is elected by Parliament and remains in office for 7 years, and in turn offers the task to a prime minister after having consulted the political parties present in Parliament. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, it is. He represents national unity and is the guarantor of the Bill of Rights by enacting the laws, which means signing them, and accepting the laws that have been approved. As another element of guarantee, the President of the Republic acts a little like a referee. He has the power to dissolve the chambers in case of a political crisis, and as a guarantee of democracy, he is ultimately the supreme leader in the civil case of the armed forces. Among his or her powers, they can also grant a pardon or liberation of a convicted person. In short, the President of the Republic is the arbitrator responsible for ensuring that Italian democracy works properly.
At this point, however, going back to the division of power, according to the Constitution, the Italian Republic is organized by another order, the courts, the judiciary, or the jurisdiction. Isn't that right?
That's right. It's the order that organizes a very important and well-known function, the job of administering justice and enforcing the laws. And the Constitution states clearly and undoubtedly that justice is administered in the name of the people. Judges are subject to the law. The judiciary is autonomous and independent of all other powers. And this power also has an autonomous self-governing body, the Superior Council of Magistrates. However, it is presided over by the President of the Republic, who ensures the autonomy and independence of the magistrates. It's not only just by chance that we once again find the figure of the President of the Republic as the guarantor. The judges therefore belong to different categories, but they distinguish themselves by their reciprocal functions. Once again, we see that same system of guarantee for the various levels of justice.
This guarantee concerns that central moment of the trial, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. The Constitution actually states that the application of justice is implemented through due process regulated by law. It goes on to say that every trial takes place with the cross-examination of both parties on an equal footing before an independent and impartial court. The law guarantees a reasonable duration. Once again, we see the importance of the guarantee. In this case, there has to be an impartial third judge in a criminal trial between the public minister, whose job it is to push the criminal proceedings before the court, and the accused with their defense.
Here we find other safeguards to protect people. In a criminal trial, the law ensures that the accused be tried in the shortest time possible.
Of course, it's extremely important. There are several different types of courts. The main categories are civil courts, who deal with problems and relations between private parties, i.e. between individual people or between companies or between a person and a company, known as the civil cases. Then we have the criminal court that deals with crimes and penalties thereof. And finally, the administrative court that deals with the issues and problems of citizens in dealing with the state and the administration. We call this the Regional Administrative Court, or TAR. Usually, once a trial is finished, you can try to ask another court to judge the same issue. It's called a Court of Appeal, or for problems between citizens and the state, it's called the State Council. If there are still issues to resolve, you can then go on to the Supreme Court, but only in a few specific cases.
The Constitutional Court is another type of court, but it plays a very important and specific role.
That's right. The most important role of the Constitutional Court is to judge disputes related to the constitutional legitimacy of the laws of the state and the Republic, to judge on conflicts of jurisdiction between the different powers of the state and the disputes between the state and the region, to judge on the disputes between the regions, and finally on allegations against the President of the Republic. If the Constitutional Court states that the law does not respect the Constitution, it may remove or delete the part that does not respect the Constitution. One last point. The courts are usually in the provincial main towns, while the appeals are held in the regional capitals, towns or cities. The Constitutional Court, the Supreme Court, Parliament and the government are all in Rome.
We find another important point here. The organization of the state and the republic is like a waterfall and by levels regarding both its operations and the territory.
Yes, I agree with you, Karen. And I really like this idea of a waterfall or constitutional river, of the republic that proceeds by levels.
Let me show you a couple of diagrams and tables about this. Here's a summary of the Constitution. Infographic 8, Summary and General Table concerning the Constitution. Fundamental Principles, Articles 1 to 12. Part 1, Rights and Duties of Citizens, Articles 13 to 54. Title 1, Civil Relations. Title 2, Social Ethic Relations. Title 3, Economic Relations. Title 4, Political Relations. Part 2, Laws of the Republic. Title 1, Parliament, Articles 55 to 82. Section 1, the Chambers. Section 2, the Formation of Laws. Title 2, the President of the Republic, Articles 83 to 91. Title 3, the Government, Articles 92 to 100. Section 1, the Council of Ministers. Section 2, the Public Administration. Section 3, the auxiliary bodies, the National Economic and Labor Council Advisory Board. The State Council is the consultative body of legal and administrative protection of justice. Title 4, the Judiciary, Articles 101 to 113. Section 1, the Judicial Organization. Section 2, Rules of Jurisdiction. Title 5, the regions, the provinces, the councils. Articles 114 to 133. Title 6, Constitutional Guarantees. Articles 134 to 139. Section 1, the Constitutional Court. Section 2, Revision of the Constitution. Constitutional Laws. Transitional and Final Provisions. Here is a summary of the other parts of the Constitution, those we mentioned earlier and those regarding your health and work rights. Further summary of the Constitution. Rights connected to the relations between people. Family and marriage, Article 29. The Republic recognizes the rights of the family as a natural society based on marriage. Marriage is based on the moral and legal equality of spouses within the limits established by law to guarantee family unity. Family and children, Article 30. It is the duty and right of parents to support, instruct, and educate their children, even if born out of wedlock. All foreign children are obliged to be educated and are entitled to enroll in schools of all levels, even if the school year has already begun. All foreign students are entitled to access and attend school even if they or their teachers do not have a residence permit. Article 45, DPR 396, 1999. The right to education of foreign children on Italian territory is held in a binding way by numerous national, international, and European agreements, documents, and regulations. Among the articles ratified by Italy in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 28 states that every individual has the right to education. Education shall be free for elementary and basic classes. Elementary education is obligatory. Work, Article 4. See also Article 35, 37, 39, and 40. The organization of trade unions is free. Other obligations cannot be imposed upon trade unions other than their registration at local or central offices according to the law. It is a condition of registration that the statutes of the trade unions are established internally on a democratic basis. Health, Social Security, Article 38. Every citizen unable to work and without the means to live has a right to welfare support. Workers have the right to be provided for and assured adequate means for their needs in case of accidents, sickness, disability, old age, or involuntary unemployment.
This idea of going from the center towards the periphery, we find it again in the way the Republic organizes itself by local territories. The territory is also governed thanks to the help of other bodies, the regions, the provinces, the metropolitan cities, and the local councils. As with the state, each region has in its own way a president, an assembly, and a government. Each of these manages its own territory in accordance with the laws of the larger bodies. This way, each of us lives inside a municipality, which is located inside a province, which lies within a region, a large part of a territory that represents a territorial unit of government that makes up Italy. As a country, as a state, which in turn is part of the European Union.
Before we take a look at all of those laws, especially the Constitution, which everybody, both Italian and foreign citizens, should know, let's go back to our chart. What do you think, Adam?
Good idea. Let's take another look at our map and chart of Italy. Okay, we've seen that Italy is at the center of the Mediterranean and has long been a connection between the north and the south and many parts of the world.
It's been like this since antiquity. You, Adam, for example, come from London, close to Europe, but at the same time far from Italy, and separated by a sea. But a sea connects as well as divides, doesn't it?
It does. Myself, like many of you, have come here from abroad. I got here a little earlier than you, quite a few years ago in fact. After I got here, I finally managed to find my job, which I also work as a mediator. I have to get to know people, speak with them and understand their problems, above all the question of how to insert themselves into Italy and Europe. Here we can see how the Italian population is made up. We can see the total number of citizens and the number of immigrant citizens. Here's how the population in Italy is transformed. All this happened in the last 10 years. Data about the population of Italy. 60.6 million inhabitants. Number of immigrants, 4,500,000 foreign citizens in the whole of Italy, of which in the northwest, with 31.3% of the total population in Italy, around 19 million inhabitants. Around 1,400,000 foreign citizens. The centre, with 17.4% of the total population, with about 10 million inhabitants, around 1 million foreign citizens. The south and the islands, with 30.4% of the population, with around 18.5 million inhabitants, with around 500,000 foreign citizens. The northeast, 16.4% of the population, with around 10 million inhabitants. Around 1 million foreign citizens. Weddings between at least one foreign spouse have multiplied in the last 10 years, as have the number of children born to foreign parents risen to 12%. From Wikipedia, in the 90s, the net migration rate continued to grow. Since 1993, it has become solely responsible for the population growth in Italy. In this map, we can also see where these populations came from. In other words, where these immigrant populations came from. Here we can see an increase in the number of immigrant citizens from 2005 to 2010, according to the different countries of origin. In Romania, it was 256.7%. In Albania, 47.4%. In Morocco, 46.3%. Chinese, 68.6%. In Ukraine, 86.4%. In Philippines, 49.6%. India, 95%. Poland, 107.9%. Moldavia, 178.1%. Tunisia, 32.5%. Macedonia, 58.8%. Peru, 64.4%. Ecuador, 61.5%. Egypt, 55.2%. Sri Lanka, 65.3%. Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo, 27.4%. Bangladesh, 95.8%. Senegal, 34.6%. Pakistan, 82.7%. Nigeria, 53.8%.
Although these numbers might make things a bit difficult at times, we can understand one thing, one important thing, how much Italy has been transformed thanks to immigration. Let's take a quick look at this last map. This map shows the distribution of immigrant citizens in Italy. You can clearly see how immigrants went in search of work in industrial areas, which in any case is more or less consistent throughout Italy. In the north, there's more work in industry. In the south, there's more work in agriculture.
Yes, that's true. However, I'd also like to remind you about something very important, strictly linked to the Italian territory. I want to remind you all that the 17th of March 2011 was the 150th anniversary of a united country. Prior to 1861, Italy was made up of many states, often controlled by other foreign states. The War for Independence began in 1848 and created a united Italy within little more than 2 decades. That period, known as the Risorgimento, is very important as it pushed Italians to join together and fight for independence and national unity. In 1870, Rome became the capital of Italy. Turin used to be the capital, followed by Florence, which lasted for 1 year. The Italy of 1861 was unlike the Italy of today. In fact, the national borders changed several times over the following decades, and only after the Second World War did Italy become the unified country that we know today. Another big difference is that Italy used to be a kingdom with a king reigning over it, whereas today it is a parliamentary republic with a president. On June 2nd, 1946, after the Second World War and the liberation of Italy from the fascist dictatorship, the Italian people selected a republic in a referendum as their form of government. This was the first time that women could vote. This is why we annually celebrate the birth of the Italian Republic on June the 2nd. But we've already mentioned some of this already. Let's go back to the last decades of the 19th century until the middle of the 20th century, where many Italians went in search of work abroad, above all in the Americas, but also in other European countries such as Germany, Belgium, and France. Here we see how Italian citizens used to have to immigrate in search of work. Now things have changed, but we shouldn't forget this.
Yes, that's very true. Before we start talking about Italy, the state, and how the laws work here, we should recognize just how young Italy is as a nation. Moreover, it's a very diverse country. From the north to the south, and not just from a geographical point of view, what about traditions? Nowadays, after quite a few years, things have been mixed together again, but different customs remain. Dialects, ways of speaking, are very different in the north than those in the south. These differences often correspond to different ways of behavior.
For example, the South is traditionally regarded as having a more informal and warmer way of being in their openness with a warm welcome to others. There are also festivals, including religious ones, and different cultures. However, we should remember that Christianity has always been the most widespread religion in Italy, ever since its origins in antiquity. Within this religion, the one with the longest majority has been Catholicism. Even if there has always been other strong denominations, especially in the last few decades due to immigration. For example, there are many Orthodox Christians here, more than 1 million, and by now more than 1 million Muslims.
All this is due to immigration. Let's take a look at this chart, this last chart here. Religions in Italy. Estimate Caritas Migrantes. Dossier 2008. Immigrants and Italian citizens. Baha'i, estimated 3,000. Buddhist, 103,000, 0.3%. Christian, 53.5 million, 91.6%. Catholic, 51 million, 87.97%. Orthodox Christian, 1,200,000, 4 to 4.5%. Protestant, 700,000, 1.5%. Other Christian, 500,000, 1.2%. Jewish, 36,000, 0.1%. Hindu, 108,950, 0.2%. Muslim, 1,293,704, 1.9%. Pagan, 13,000. Sikh, estimated 25,000, 0.1%. Other religions, 450,000, 1.1%. Non-religious, 4 million, 5.8%. Statistics refer to 2008. These numbers aren't so important in this case, as are what it represents. We are getting close to mentioning our Constitution, aren't we?
Exactly. With these numbers, we can understand that a country can have loads of different people with different beliefs.
So, we're coming to the end of this first episode of our series, which doubles as a course. In this episode, we have spoken about the country where we find ourselves, its characteristics, and its transformation regarding immigration. We then tried to describe the complicated and interesting mechanism of the construction of the Democratic Republic of Italy within the European Union, which has gone on to become a large community of European states.
Speaking of which, Karen, we had almost forgotten to mention one last important thing. Italy is part of the European Union, which currently includes 27 member states with almost 500 million citizens.
Yes, this is an extremely important fact. And Italy was one of the founding countries of the European Union. The core of the Union was created in the 1950s as the European Economic Community, or the EEC. And then the European Union was born in 1993. Every 5 years, the citizens of the member states elect their representatives in the European Parliament.
It's important to point out just how the EU's competence has increased over the years into different fields: economics, finance, foreign policy, as well as an issue that interests us all, immigration. An agreement on the laws regarding immigration, as well as others, are based on the directives, laws, and European agreements. For example, foreign citizens holding a permanent residence card are entitled to the same treatment as other European citizens in accordance with EU standards.
We should remember just what this European Union is. We could say that it was initially created as a supranational organization of states regarding economic issues, which gradually has been given a more unified structure with the form of a supranational political entity made up of different member states. These states then voluntarily decided to unite and integrate into an organization with a set of uniform laws. The basic principles upon which the Union is founded are those of human rights, equality, freedom, and human dignity. The Union's goal is to promote peace and prosperity, as well as security, above all for its citizens. In this sense, the Union and its Parliament, through its laws, make decisions on different matters such as education, the environment, defense, and the economy. Now, you can understand just how we have moved on from an internal organization of the Republic and the Italian state to this larger family of states, the European Union, which includes Italy. Before we finish today, let's go over what we said so far and summarize the different issues in today's episode. We looked at the construction of the Italian Republic through its origins and the organization of that central document known as the Italian Constitution, where we can find a sort of map, and as we said, of history, of fundamental rights, the main rules, and the ways to build and operate the state and the Republic. In the next episodes, we will look further into the more specific aspects, linked even more so to our daily lives and the daily lives of immigrant citizens in this country. From the residence permit to health issues, from schooling for our children up to the issue of work. We'd like to bid you all a goodbye until we meet again in our next episode.
See you all next time.